All right, I'm back at the piano again. Purely because, well, not purely because I'm lazy, but I don't really feel like changing it up right now because I do want to see how this works. Because I think that playing an instrument while talking is, well, first off, it's really fun. I like to do it on phone calls. But in those phone calls, I tend not to be doing a lot of talking. So there's a little bit of dissonance there, but I think it inherently makes me better at the instrument. So, speaking of instruments, this video was going to be about my journey into, out of, and back into the piano. So, ironically enough, we start back in the days of yore with the violin. So, I used to play the violin in school. I had one of those schools where it was a requirement to play an instrument, and I chose the violin because it was it looked like the easiest to get into. I had options between like cellos and violas and whatnot. One of my friends had a bass, and it was like crazy tall. It was awesome. Had an incredible voice to it. But that aside, I started the violin, and I was playing the violin. I was decent at it. I was one of those students that would get away with just memorizing the motions a lot without actually learning much until I was forced at some point to learn the to learn how to read the sheet music. And even then, I would still just memorize the pieces from the sheet music and never read along with the stuff. So that was fun. I genuinely enjoyed that. I had some teachers back in the day that they really dealt with a lot with me. So what's really fun about that is it got me into it dipped my toes into playing some instruments. And then one year at a family reunion, my uncle sat down. I think he's a second uncle, once removed or something like that. But anyway, big family. Everyone's really close, which is great. But my uncle sat down at a piano, and we all started singing a bunch of different songs, right? Like Brown Eyed Girl, Hallelujah. What's the... there's a bunch of them. We all sat around and sang a bunch of songs, and him playing the piano inspired me to want to play the piano. So I told my dad about it, and he's like, yeah, okay, that's cool. So I started that didn't connect. I started playing the piano a little bit just by myself because we had one in the house we were renting. And I went through and I started playing that a little bit, and he went, okay, cool, let me get you a tutor. And so my dad supported me a ton through my life, so I really appreciated him. But it's like, okay, let me get you a tutor. So I went through and I got a piano tutor at some point. He was the same person who taught my brother how to play the guitar. But I never actually cared about learning the piano. It was about being able to play different songs so that people could sing to them. And that's a really important distinction for the first part of this. So after I was with the tutor for a bit, I learned how to play chords. And after I learned how to play chords, I stopped learning the piano and just played chords back and forth. And so what I did is I then dropped the tutor, and only learned chords for a while. And then we ended up moving, and the piano didn't move with us. So we moved for a while, and I didn't touch a piano for years. It was probably about a year and a half, and then the want to start to play the piano hit me again. And one of my dad's friends came over, and he's a really good piano player, and he's like, okay, cool, so here's how I would start. He was piano genius kid who just kind of sat at a piano and could play everything by ear. So I asked him, if you could learn how to play the piano, how would you do it? So he goes, don't care about sheet music, chord progression, music theory, anything like that. The way you get better at the piano is just by sitting down and playing it. So I took him at his word for that, and he gave a little bit more advice than that. So he had some really good advice, but I ended up just sitting at the piano every day for like a month, and I got used to all of the things, picked up all the tips and tricks that he said, and I could not play for the life of me. It was just, I just sat down and I would play, right, or something like that, or like, right, but that was a trick that I picked up on YouTube. So, but I could never do the thing that I wanted to do on the piano, which is just like sit down and right? So just sit down and be able to mash some chords and play some higher melody pieces. And I went through and I just tried and I tried and I tried, and I looked up video after video and tutorial after tutorial, and I could never get it down. And so I took an idea that I heard a while ago, which was just black keys all sound good together. Doesn't matter how you, right? Doesn't matter how you mash them, they sound good together. So then I just started play a bass line octave. So I just play some notes in one hand and play some notes in the other one. And this was the first time I actually had the ability to feel like I was playing the piano. Now, anyone can do this kind of thing, and for months of effort, it's like, well, you didn't actually do anything. But to me, it felt like I unlocked the next step of piano playing. So because it felt like I unlocked the next step of piano playing, I stuck with it. But I could never get to the point where it wasn't just black keys until I sat down, and one day it just kind of clicked. I heard an idea where you could play those 5 notes. If you play those 5 notes in the key of C, any amount of them. I had started diving into music theory at this point against the advice of my parents' friend, just because I was so stuck. And there's a thing called a pentatonic scale, where all the notes in there sound nice, and it turns out that that's what all the black keys are, just in a completely different key. So I took that idea, and I'm really familiar with the key of C and no other keys outside of that, which is something I have to fix. But I learned I just went, okay, let's start playing. And it was just about as bad as that was. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? It just didn't quite happen until I just went like this. And I slowly added more in from the one note that I kept replaying. So that's how I actually got into being able to play it, where I just tried over and over and over and over again and failed at pretty much every point you could, because I am so stubborn that I just decided that I was going to do it all myself and I wasn't going to ask for help from anybody, and that was definitely a thing that could have fixed all of my problems. But then I tried to ask help and I was asking the wrong question because I couldn't figure out how to do a melody. And it turns out that you can just play the same key over again. And it sounds like a song. And because of that, it got me playing all the stuff. And so I went from a whole setup of violin, mimicking songs, to mimicking playing the piano. And I would just play chords over and over again, and it was fun. Don't get me wrong, it was a ton of fun to play chords and whatnot over different songs and sing, but it never felt like I could actually play the piano. So it went from all of that to being able to do something like this, which was something that I could have never dreamed of doing. And yeah, I wanted to talk about this kind of story. I wanted to talk about sorry. I wanted to talk about this kind of story because I'm bringing up at the end of the week on Saturday is when I'm planning on doing a singing whatnot with a piano backing. And it's terrifying to me and whatnot, but I figured that I would probably give some background to why I am doing the backing track of all of my stuff by myself. And it's because I am terrified and take pride in and am happy for and have put a lot of work to being able to play something that doesn't sound like crap on the piano. So because of that, I really like to put forward some of the music and whatnot that I've done, and it's nothing special, and I know that it's not like the best of the best, but I figure for a backing track it works. just a little bit of mental stimulation as you continue and listen to the video, if anyone's gotten this far. And so I just wanted to go through the story behind it, because I figured that would put a bit more gravitas to the thing that I'm planning on doing at the end of the week. Tomorrow is when I'm planning on talking about. Let's hold on. I gotta check to make sure that my days are accurate on this. Yeah. So tomorrow I'm gonna be talking about how I got into singing, and that's a fun one. But I just wanted to take a moment to kind of document how I got here and why it's important to me that I got here. Even though it's probably, the odds that someone actually cares about this and isn't just like, hey, good job, just, being a cool vibe and whatnot. The odds that someone actually cares about this is extremely low, which is fine, because I appreciate the advancements that I've made through it, but it felt important to give some background for one of the reasons why I've been terrified of getting into some of these things, and it's because I've put a lot of work into it, and I know that I'm not the best that I could be. So there's there's some fear that someone's going to be like, hey, that's where you're messing up, and it's like, ooh, that hurts because it's true. So I just wanted to give some background on it. So